Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thanks for joining. I wanted to discuss a little bit about some of the mistakes that I made early on when I was first getting started, and when it comes to mating choices and EPDs, etc. Early on, I didn't come from a cattle farming background, and so I had to learn everything. And being a numbers guy, I focused way too much on EPDs. It took me 1 or 2 years and 1 or 2 calf crops before I realized that something just wasn't adding up. The cattle were not looking and the calves were not looking like I really wanted to. So I started doing a lot more research and trying to figure out, not only EPDs, but looking at the amount of muscling, the shape of the bulls I were using. Is their back end bigger than front end, etc. Looking at trying to find out about the feet structure and also fertility, and that became a big thing for me to really focus on. And us holding on to our cows for as long as we have and growing organically, I think allowed that to happen. A lot of those problems that you didn't really see, when the cows are middle age, a lot of these problems don't show up till years 8, 9, 10, and when those problems would arise, not only could we cull the actual cows, but then we could actually go back and cull that entire lineage. So it took us a lot longer to get where we wanted to be genomically, but we ended up with, I feel like, a relatively good cattle herd that is sound and fertile and has the right temperament to build our herd off of. So if you look at some of the things that we look at, obviously an example here is J16. She comes from one of our foundation type females, and her EPDs are not that great, but she comes back to expectation 49-15, and she's a big eye daughter, which is a future direction son. Her EPDs are not that great. Her yielding weights are only like 83. But when you look at how many calves she's weaned, she's 12 years old currently, and she's weaned 9 calves. Luckily, 8 of those have been heifers, which obviously doesn't have any relevance to her and her part in all this. But luckily we were able to get 8 heifers out of her that we could keep and kind of help propagate some of her genetics. Always being self-critical of cattle, my own cattle, we're always looking for ways to improve. I feel like she needed a little bit more height. She only has a yearling height of 0.4, and so we took care of that in some of the mating choices that we did for her offspring. But she's a super docile cow. Her calves are always easy to tag. She's a really good mama. But more importantly, she's super fertile. Her calving intervals are around 355 days. And she's a solid cow. And if you look at, for a cow this old, her feet are really in really good shape. Could they have a little bit more claw angle? Yeah, they could. But, her feet's in good shape for a cow this old. And then also, if you look at kind of her udders and her bag, it's really nice and tight. She's nursing a calf right now. Her teats are small. And that's what I like to see in an old cow. And, not holding on to the cows till they get to this age. A lot of times you won't see those problems. So there's pluses and minuses to do it both ways. I don't know if it's the right way or the wrong way. It's just what we done. And like I said, it took us a lot longer to get there, but I feel like we got a good group of cows now that are structurally sound and reproductive, and kind of built the foundation around some of these cows. And we got several in our herd that is like 16 here. This is just an example. I was working her, so I wanted to take some video of her. She still has a good BCS score. She's holding her fleshing ability is still really good, and she's still producing plenty of milk. So there's no need for us to really get rid of her. I thought about taking her out of production, but every year it just seems like we hold on to her. If you look at her offspring, this is a little heifer, 131, And, obviously her EPDs are improved because 16 is her grand dam. She's got a birth weight of like 0.1, calving of 15, yearling weight of 146, and a dollar C at 320. One thing about the EPDs, kind of going back to it, and I'll show a correlation, but you see how fleshed out she is. According to her EPD, she would require a little more groceries than the next heifer that I'm going to show. But the real performance, I don't see that. I'm hoping that the fertility has followed this lineage. I don't know if there's any correlation or not, but we did pull some oocytes from 131 here to try to help propagate those genetics. And she did give us 8 embryos, which was a significant amount more embryos than any of the other heifers that we actually went through the ET flushing process. So I could be looking into things. It may not be the case, but I don't know. We'll see. It sure seems like hopefully that fertility has followed that lineage. And if you look at this next heifer here, 119, she's an ET calf, and unfortunately I don't know the history of this cow because we purchased the embryo, and it's one of the reasons why I don't do that anymore. We wanted to try, and we tried it for 2 years, and I don't know, I just feel like I'd rather do it and get the embryos from my own cattle, just because I know the history. From a breed standpoint, 119, she's got a yearling weight of like 159 and a combined value of 361. But all the EPD says that she should require less groceries. And these heifers are fed just like any other commercial cattle operation. They are no grain. All they're eating is haylage put in a hay ring and a good mineral program. They're not receiving any protein blocks or any protein supplements or any grain. So yeah, they're a little skinny, but I'm not worried about it because I'm not breeding these heifers probably until late spring. So they're just kind of being treated, and so when you run your cattle like this, you do get to see some of the differences. But according to the EPDs, 131 should need more groceries, and I just think 131 has a little bit higher BCS score than 119, and that goes against what the EPD say. So there again, you got to look at the performance. You can't base everything off of EPDs. You got to look at the longevity of the cows, know the history of the cows, the fertility, the amount of muscling they have, and a lot of other things, other factors that go into it other than just EPDs and what can be seen on paper. And that, like I said, that was a mistake that I made probably the first 2 years. Luckily, I corrected it after that first or second calf crop. I seen the error of my ways, so to speak. So just trying to share some information here to help others that may be looking and trying to determine EPDs, etc. That some of the things, like we've always used low birth weight bulls. We've always tried to keep calving kind of middle of the road. Took genomics on a heifer, and she came back with a calving that was pretty outrageous. It was like +4, +5. I actually called the Angus Association, asked questions about it, because in 18 years we never used a bull with a birth weight over +2, +2.5. How in the world could a birth weight come back so high as +4, +5? And so I question sometimes the accuracy of the genomic, and we got to have it. EPDs are great, but just I caution how much emphasis you put on those EPDs, because when I did talk to the Angus Association, there was a pretty significant error in what that number could swing left and right to. I can't remember right off what it was, but there is a little bit of quite a bit of error in some of these things, especially when their accuracies are only 0.3, 0.4, which is what usually comes back when you do the DNA testing on them. So a little bit of pictures of some cattle. We do a lot of things on the channel. These are some of our future J2 cattle, I would say. Wanted to share and talk about some things and let everyone kind of see some cattle that we have, and just try to avoid some of the mistakes that I originally made by just focusing purely on EPDs. And then, should we have done this way? Should we have grown organically, or should we have maybe sold off our cows at 5 and 6 years old and went out and bought bred heifers and replacements with better genetics, etc.? I don't know. I do feel like maybe we wouldn't have been able to see the problems, but we would have been able to get a lot better genetics a lot faster. Did I make the right decision? I don't know. Ask me in 10 years and I'll tell you. But it's what we chose to do and how we chose to kind of breed our herd, knowing the cattle and the lineage. And there's always more than one way. That's what's so great about farming, is what works for me may not work for someone else, and what works for someone else may not work for me. Every case is unique, but just wanted to kind of share a little bit of our history and how we've got to where we're at, and some of the mating choices and things that we've done on our cattle. But if you got any questions, feel free to reach out to me. Thanks for watching. Don't forget, if you like some of the content that we're posting, like and subscribe, and follow as we post more and more things, from anything from homesteading to farming to cattle to everything. So thanks for watching.